Hello. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. How's everyone feeling? Still full of energy? Maybe just to express how we are feeling, I will count to 3. If you can shout out loud one word that represent your feeling this morning. And at the same time. And no discussion. All right? Just one word that express your feeling this morning out loud. 1, 2, 3. All right. one more time. Same word. 1, 2, 3. All right. Didn't understand the word, but very good. I hope everyone's still full of energy for today. We're still having excellent panel discussion. We have amazing speakers who will be sharing their ideas, their thoughts on different subjects, and of course their story. But before we go to that, I want to share one thing that I did yesterday and very proud of, and also remind ourselves what did we do yesterday. Not all of the activity, of course, but some of the main points that our team have noticed been happening yesterday. Yesterday we did a lot, but the one thing that I personally did and very proud of was taking the pledge. And I tell you why. So there is many messages on the photo booth, and I took the pledge with the words on value the unpaid work. I posted on my Facebook page, and it became very effective because one of my fans, she was replying on that under that photos, saying that exactly happened to me. I'm doing a lot of housework, and nobody is giving value to that. And that's one of the comment, I think. But then she also further another comment from the same person. She asked, is it okay if I tell my parent that I don't want to do that work anymore? If I wanted to go out, if I want to do something else. So I'm very proud of taking that pledge on my social media because at least one girl is now discussing if it is okay to talk to her parents and say, can I do something else? It's not that these are not important jobs, but she was very, very tired. And that's just because I took a pledge, I posted on my Facebook page, and now we're having a discussion. There was only one small example that I'm very proud of. So I hope I can continue to encourage you to take the pledge during our session and share it on your social media. It's not for the benefits of the conference, it's the benefits of the people that you have contact with, because you never know. One little things that we did will inspire or lead the discussion to a whole new level. Well, that's what I did yesterday. Besides that, I was on and off stage a lot. And what we did yesterday, if I allow me to read the notes that I have, is that we have learned that women can see how to turn challenge into opportunities. For example, we heard about the tech company addressing violence in the skills section. We also heard stories from the grassroots from different realities. We learned that women are facing discrimination and violence at workplace. But even worse than that, they're silent. They won't dare to open a discussion. Women investing in education does not automatically bring return in better job for them. Having mentors, sponsors, and more female role models in leadership and non-traditional sector like STEM is crucial. And we heard that if more women were alongside men driving policy, that would be more justice. We also learned that we can decide what tomorrow will look like by taking action today, and that's why we are here. With that, I would like now to hand over our stage to the panel discussion, but allow me to invite and introduce our chair for this morning session. Can we all give a round of applause for Ms. Kanpanya Raj Singhot? She is the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Labour and Employment, Government of India. With her diverse skill and experience, she has about 25 years of executive management experience. On her current assignment, she's leading the world's largest child labor education program in India. She also had the policies and lawmaking unit concerning child labor, women labor, industrial relationship, including industrial dispute, occupational and process safety in mine ranking from oil and coal to metals, and with the Ministry of Labor and Employment, Government of India. And she is chairing other amazing women and men on the subject of generating decent jobs in care economy and importance of supporting work and family balance. So we would like to now invite on stage Ms. Ayomi, Assistant Director General and Head of Training Solution, Legal and HR, the Employer Federation of Ceylon, Sri Lanka. Ms. Anna Lee, the Senior Officer, Women and Project, International Trade Union Confederation, Asia Pacific, Singapore. Mr. Jong Chol Kim, Director, Women Employment Policy Division, Ministry of Employment and Labor, Korea. And Ms. Elizabeth Tang, General Secretary, International Domestic Worker Federation from Hong Kong. With that, I turn over the stage to our chairs, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Nana, for those kind words. A very good morning to one and all present here on this lovely day. Well, much debate, discussion, discourses have been going on. Future of work, evolution of work. Let me start with evolution of Homo sapien to Homo sapien sapien. Evolution of social animal to social cultural animal. Much has happened. Industrialization happened. IT is happening. The very nature of work has changed. But the role and responsibilities of women have not changed. Then, when the subsistence was hunting-gathering type, man, the physically stronger one, went hunting, which required physical force and strength. And physically weaker women stayed behind to do softer jobs, which included child rearing. And even till date, this role continues on. Well, this event and this session in particular deals with this issue. I thank ILO and the Australian government for organizing this event. And I'm privileged to chair this important session. And I'm also privileged to have eminent authorities on the subject here with me today on stage. In form of Ayomi Fernando, Annalie Tuweda, Jong Chol Kim, and Elizabeth Tang. Care, whether paid or unpaid, is crucial to human well-being and to the pattern of economic development. How the problems of care are addressed by the society has important implications for achieving gender equality, as it could broaden the capabilities and choices of women. Maybe it's biological, as she's the one who gives birth to a child. Or maybe it has to do with EQ. Here I'm talking about emotional quotient. Or maybe it's just perceived to be like that. But across most cultures, most countries, the responsibility of caring for home, children, and elderly is that of a woman. Coupled with this are the issues of changing demographics, with increasing median age and rise in elderly population, changing family structures, migration, etc., which are leaving no other option for the woman but to opt out of steady employment. The World Employment and Social Outlook in its Trend for Women 2017 of the ILO reported that the current global labor force participation rate, what we called as LFPR, is at 49.9% and is 26.7% lower than the rate of men in 2017. Over the past decade, Southern Asia has experienced the longest, or I would say the largest, widening gap amongst all regions. The female LFPR is less than 30% points in Southern Asia region. This calls for the need to understand and systematically investigate the reasons for low participation and also work towards adopting and strengthening and investigating the reasons for low participation and also work towards adopting and strengthening sound policies for the promotion of gender equality in the world of work. It has been empirically proven women's normative responsibility of domestic work and childcare affects women LFPR, the occupations where they are employed, and their own choice of paid employment. But LFPR is a matter of concern. Many reasons can be attributed to it, but is it attributed to failure of a woman to achieve work and family balance? The sustenance of women in labor market depends largely on effective policies at the workplace to reconcile work and family life balances. There are socio-cultural differences across countries. Thus, any policy discourse must weave the socio-cultural aspects beside changing family structures, etc. Provision of paid maternity leave, creche facilities, preschool education facilities, flexi hours, work from home, etc. can alleviate some of the problems. India has done quite a bit here. India is one of very few countries which gives 26 weeks of paid maternity leave. Creche facilities, irrespective of the kind of employees, we have given to any organization which is having 50 or more employees to have creche facilities. Even in rural area, we have given facility for creche. Anganwadi workers is another one. In such a scenario, developing care work as an important sector of any economy will reach rich dividends. Now, when we talk about care, at primary level, we can classify care as personal care, household care, child care, and elderly care, and even sick care. And when we talk at the secondary level, the care can take many different forms, like health care, which could be institutional or home-based, creche, preschool education, domestic cleaning, laundry, cooking, essentials shopping, driving, pet care, plant care, salons, etc., etc. While industrialization happened, or it helped metamorphose the nature of work, technology has come to the assistance of women at household level. Amazons or eBays, through their delivery staff, have brought shops to the doorstep. Home delivery of ready-made food has eased the cooking stress. And in all such spheres, huge new jobs have been created and is a major spin-off of women's entry into labor market. And this we call care economy. And it's in everyone's interest that this booming new sector with these caregivers is duly protected. The question that arises is, how do we generate decent jobs in the care economy? I would now invite Ms. Fernanda to speak on this subject and on striking work-family balance. And let me introduce her to you. Ms. Ishwari Ayomi Fernando is LLB Honours, University of Colombo, Attorney at Law, Sri Lanka Law College. She's the Assistant Director General and Head of Training and Legal HR Solutions of the Employees Federation of Ceylon. Having joined the EFC in 1999, she trains extensively on topics such as labor law framework of Sri Lanka, international labor standards, gender, and HIV. She has also served as a visiting lecturer at the Faculty of Graduate Studies of the University of Colombo and Postgraduate Institute of Management, PIM, lecturing on topics such as work-life balance and the laws and preventing workplace sexual harassment. Ms. Fernando has represented the EFC on several tripartite bodies such as Project Advisory Board of the ILO, US Department of Labor Workplace, HIV/AIDS Education Program, the Ministry of Labor Relations, and Manpower's Advisory Board on Gender, and the ILO's tripartite panel of experts to discuss a global standard on workplace violence 2016. She was also a member of the task force set up by the National HRD Council in 2017 to recommend measures to increase the labor force participation rate of women in Sri Lanka. May I invite Ms. Fernandez to give her opinion.
Thank you, Kalpana. Let's hope this works. Yeah, it does. Thank you, Kalpana, and good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. It was a wonderful experience being part of this conference today, yesterday, and I think to serve as a panelist is indeed my privilege. I look forward to sharing some experiences and thoughts with all of you on this issue of the care economy and the importance of generating decent jobs in it, and this whole thorny issue of work-family balance. Now, the two are connected, but there are also distinct, I would say, features which are separate, which should ideally have been separately discussed, but I'll do my best. Our panel doesn't have too much time, and I too, like our chair, will be setting the stage. My fellow panelists will take over with specifics in certain areas and country experiences that they will share with you. Now, to start, to recap a few things that Kalpana said before, the care economy where we are in gives a lot of opportunities to women for a lot of reasons. With more women joining the workforce, we have to also look at opportunities that focus on our specific as women as some of our skills. And through generations, the roles that we as women have sometimes taken on and developed skills that go along with it. It also, when you look at demographics, the care economy is also probably one of the fastest growing sectors of subsectors of economies in our region as well as in the world. Where I come from, Sri Lanka, we have an aging population, perhaps more in common with Japan and some other Southeast Asian countries. We will probably lose the demographic dividend within the next couple of years. Now, India, Pakistan, my neighbors in the sub-region are lucky. They have young populations, so they do not have to grapple too much with this issue of elderly care right now, but my country is facing it. I think Korea as well will have this problem, or they are already having this problem. So yes, demographics provides opportunities, and the care economy as a whole does provide opportunities to women. Because whether we like it or not, I don't know whether we have taken on this role voluntarily or whether it has been thrust upon us, women are perceived as being carers and nurturers. And with it, we are believed to have the skill set necessary to be a very important part of this growing sector, the care economy. Now, having said that, we also need to look at the family. And there we find that a woman's work in care in the family is unpaid work. It is often also undervalued work. Now, I remember some time ago sitting through a skit which was done by none other than the Prime Minister of my country's wife, who is a professor in English. She's a gender activist and a trainer and a writer. And she had prepared this skit where you had two men talking. One was contemplating marriage, the other one was a married man who said, "My wife does not work." So the other guy asked the married man, "Okay, so what does your wife do within the day? She must be very bored." And he had this list. Okay, she gets up at this time in the morning, she prepares the children's food, she prepares them for school, she takes them to work, she comes back, she does this, and her day started at about 4 in the morning and ended at maybe midnight, past it on some days. So this other guy looked at him and said, "You're saying your wife does not work?" right? So it's undervalued in the family. The people nearest and dearest to you, for whom you sacrifice a lot as a housewife maybe, do not appreciate what you do. So first, I would say hats off to these wonderful women who are doing this very important task for society. But then again, as a country, these also happen to be fairly educated women. Now in my country, primary, secondary, higher education is free. We invest a lot in women, and we need a return on it. So we also have to look at ways to get more of these women who are doing definitely a wonderful job in their homes. We need to get them into economic work. And when a woman gets into that kind of work, we all know about the triple gender role that women have. They have the productive role if they're doing work with the economic value on it, paid work. They have their reproductive work and related functions, and they have a role in society, in the community as well. So this is a huge burden on women. So when we talk about family work and family, which we are going to be looking at later, we have to look at ways of making this humongous task easier in terms of laws, policies, and sometimes in terms of structures within organizations, and also attitudes. Attitudes are a huge problem here when we talk about the roles of women has, work-life balance in particular. So let's keep that at the top of our minds throughout this session as we progress. Now, another area that I want to look at is that when we talk about the care economy, we need to realize that there is a possibility of some gender inequalities here. When we look at the labor market and some of the disadvantages women face in the labor market, job segregation is one of them. Now, the care economy as it is now, and maybe as it will grow to be in the future, has both vertical and horizontal segregation. We see horizontal segregation in care, in work where whether it's nursing or home-based care, domestic work. We see it's an area of horizontal segregation where we get women clustered in low-paying, undervalued jobs. And that is likely to prevail unless we do something about it. Then we also see vertical segregation in the care sector as it is right now in maybe the hospital sector, where we see at the lower line of the bottom rung of the ladder, we see the lower paid nurses, attendants who happen to be women. We see the hospital administrators and the high jobs with influence and position being men. So that is something we really need to look at when we talk about creating decent jobs for men and women and removing some of the discriminatory factors that operate against women in this sector, which is likely to expand in the future. Another area which I see as an opportunity, but once again we need to look at it from both sides, is that in our countries, in this part of the world, we rely on women, sending our women out, and they prop up our economies. And a lot of them have been going as carers, domestic workers, and the care economy, if we upgrade it to some extent, will provide them with opportunities for better jobs than what perhaps they have right now. So it will give them maybe a wider range of options, but for that we need to skill them, and we also have to look at the consequences in terms of their families. Now in my country, for instance, if a woman has very young children, she cannot go abroad to work as a domestic worker. We haven't brought in similar restrictions for nurses. We don't have too many going right now, but that's something we need to look at. Now, we also have to be a little bit careful here, because I know for the Philippines, I remember went through this problem, where they assumed that there were going to be a lot of jobs in America in the care sector. People invested heavily, people borrowed money to go to nursing school. They were trained, and the jobs died out, right? The jobs just dried out. So what do you do? How do you prepare yourself as a nation for that kind of thing happen? Because we've seen it happen in the past. So those are some of the opportunities, and within these opportunities, I would say there are also a few dangers that could possibly be hidden. Now, when looking at generating decent jobs in the care economy, one thing which we could also look at is, now as these jobs become more and more vital to our societies, we need to place a premium on those jobs. We can't just continue to pay them very little, expect women who are largely in these jobs to work very long hours and be happy. We have to place a premium on some of the work in the care economy. Of course, this depends on your population demographics. It depends on what you as a country can afford to pay, but I do think that the ILO Convention on Equal Pay, one of the core conventions which all of us have ratified, I know this is one of the most difficult conventions to implement on ground because it's not just equal pay for equal work, it's equal pay for work of equal value. So how do you equate the value a caregiver, the value that he or she contributes to the economy, and look at changing your pay structures along those lines? So that is one thing that we should take up as a challenge. The other is to eliminate some of the job segregation, both vertical and horizontal, in this sector. Another one is providing skills, the right skills, because if we provide people in care, mostly women, with the right skills, they have an opportunity to earn more and to upgrade, to have a better standard of living. The other side is the occupational safety and health issues here. Not just in terms of the work, which can be heavy. Some of the women in our region are slightly built. We have to look at the strain the work puts on them. And we also need to look at safety in this sector, because sexual harassment in the hospital sector is quite bad, and when it's in a domestic setting, it's likely to be very much worse. So those are not all the issues that I had planned to cover, but some of them. So I will leave it to my fellow panelists to take you all through the other areas, and look forward to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayumi. Well, she just mentioned changing demographics in Sri Lanka. Yes, demographics with rising or upward trend of the median age. It lays emphasis on care for elderly people. In India too, a decade back, the median age was something around 20. Now it's about 26. A decade later, it would be in its 30s. So we need to think seriously about care for elderly people. Taking the discussion forward, may I invite Mr. Jong Chol Kim to talk about care economy and work-life balance in Korea. Jong Chol Kim has been the head of Women's Employment Policy Division at the Ministry of Employment and Labor of the Republic of Korea since June 2015. Since he became a public servant in 1994, he has worked in various labor policy areas such as employment promotion for women and the differently abled persons, labor protection of non-regular workers, retirement, corporate pension, and international standards. He served as the labor counselor at the Permanent Mission of the Republic of Korea in Geneva from 2010 to 2013. He had work experience at private enterprise SK, a Korean global company, as an advisor on labor relations issues from 2005 to 2007. He had taught on the subject of Korean labor policies at graduate school in Korea. Mr. Kim.
Thank you for your wonderful introducing myself. Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here as one of just a few men in this room. My name is Jong-chol Kim. Currently, I'm in charge of women's employment policy in the Republic of Korea. For this session, I would like to introduce the recent direction of Korea's women's employment policy. Yes, we got a slide. In fact, I prepared English version of women's employment policy. As I said, it just made last December. However, unfortunately, I couldn't bring paper copies for you. We got just one slide. Why? Because the ILO's beautiful policy of free of paper meeting. But after the conference, the ILO office will upload the full version of the file on the website. First of all, that's the three pillars of recently designed employment policy for women. Before talking about that slide, first of all, I want to talk about the importance of women's employment in the context of Korean society. Women's employment is a key means of creating a fair society free of discrimination, and it is directly associated with the potential of economic growth. In particular, as Korea faces seriously low birth rate and became aging society, utilization of female workforce is a key to coping with labor shortage problem. Next, I want to talk about the current status of women's employment. Korea's female employment rate has steadily increased to 56% last year, but it is still low compared to those of the OECD countries. In terms of job quality, women's hourly earnings are just 64% of men's, which is the largest gender pay gap among OECD countries. Regretfully, I'm sorry about that. And also the glass ceiling index faced by Korean women is also the highest among OECD members. Once again, regretfully. As I already said to you, Korean government made a newly renovated women's employment policy focusing on 3 pillars. The first one is establishment of job environment free of discrimination. The first pillar. The second pillar is prevention of career interruption. The third pillar is promotion of re-employment for women who her career is already interrupted. Okay, from now on, I'd like to highlight some bullet points of the newly renovated policy. For the first pillar of establishing work environment free of discrimination, Korea will enhance the prevention and supervision of sexual harassment in the workplace and employment discrimination based on gender by way of increasing labor inspectors whose job is just specialized in gender equality from this year. And secondly, we will also reduce the gender wage gap by introducing a corporate wage disclosure system, which includes the information on wage by gender. And we will then spread the wage system based on job contents themselves. For the second pillar of preventing career interruption, Korea has a plan to raise parental leave benefits. We want to raise parental leave benefits for a decent job for women. And more importantly, we will boost fathers' participation in childcare leave. Personally, I believe that increasing daddy's role in child caring and housekeeping is the most important factor for a decent job for women. And also to prevent women's career interruption, work-life balance practice is so important. Especially Korean government will focus on changing traditional working method, such as habitual long working hours, inefficient meeting practices, and frequent contact by mobile messenger during non-working hours is the concept of disconnected right. Maybe you know. And the last pillar is the policy about the re-employment of women whose career is interrupted for quite a long time. For this purpose, Korean government will strengthen tax incentives for companies which rehire career-interrupted women and expand public funds investment in leading companies which is utilize women's competency exemplarily. In addition to that, Korea aims to expand opportunities for decent job for women, especially in care economy. Korea is now trying to institutionalize the domestic service market by making specific law which is especially designed only for this purpose. And also, yesterday we talked about STEM field. Regarding STEM issue, Korea will reinforce women in science, engineering, and technology to return to work and reinforce technology-based startups by women. We will also foster a women's role in social economy, which is friendly with the concept of better work, especially for women. I'd like to conclude my remark. I just highlight 2 points, lastly. Recently, Korean government developed smartphone application which can check, firstly, possibility of sexual harassment behavior, and secondly, gender role stereotypes. This application tool consists of 40 simple but very meaningful questions which can be finished in just 5 minutes. After answering those questions, you may get a result score and you can get to know your status about your knowledge about sexual harassment in your country, in Korea, together with your attitude to traditional gender role, your score, you can get to know. And, okay, time's up. Last one, I want to talk about daddy's role. In recent 3 years, men's participation rate for parental leave in Korea increased radically. Last year, 1 of 8 who took parental leave was male. Actually, in Korea, incredible experience, incredible phenomena. Even though that number is still low comparing to a Northern European country, Sweden, Norway, such as, but yeah, as I said, it is incredible phenomena, and Korean government will make more efforts proactively to precipitate men's role in child caring and housekeeping. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kim. Well, just to add on, yes, we as women also would like man's involvement in managing the family affairs. And in that line, even we in India have paternity leave, which a man is entitled to during his career for 2 surviving children. So his involvement right at the time of birth of child is important so that there is connection between the newborn and father. And that is how everything starts. The more distant you are, difficult it is to add on later. Yes, care economy, when we talk about it, there is a huge gap between demand and supply. There's a deficit out there. And we see an immense potential of employment growth in there. Let's now see an analysis of this potential in OECD countries and emerging economies, and how some of the care pressures on women and working families can be alleviated to some extent through synergism between trade unions and other partners. I would now request Ms. Tuvera to take the floor. Now, Ms. Anali Tuvera, she is the Senior Officer, Women in Projects, International Trade Union. She is responsible for coordinating the implementation of ITUC Asia Pacific's Platform of Action for Gender Equality, a framework for the organization and affiliates wider policy and action towards the achievement of gender policy in the region. She provides the technical support as Secretary to ITUC AP Women's Committee. This committee is a regional body composed of women leaders from 59 affiliated organizations in 34 countries in the region. And before joining this in 2013, she has been with the largest trade union movement in the Philippines for more than 10 years, in charge at various times in organizing training and workers' education programs, managing development cooperation projects on human trafficking, child labor, among others, and rendering research and evaluation services on industrial relations. Ms. Anna.
Thank you. Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I know you probably read or heard it many times. The future is female. But what does it mean exactly when working families, particularly women, are facing multiple care responsibilities? When they are penalized for demanding more flexibility or for taking advantage of flexibility options? When they are systematically driven out of their jobs by staggering costs of childcare or difficulties of getting childcare? When childcare costs are rising, and yet childcare providers, which are mostly women, are some of the most lowest paid workers in the world. What are women who are trying to create a better future for their families and children? These are the same people we put our hearts, hopes, and aspirations on as the key builders of the society and the community are supposed to do in these situations. I feel that things don't have to be this difficult. The trade union movement recognizes that it makes a lot of sense to invest in care, and so it organizes its work around the care economy. A research commissioned by the International Trade Union Confederation in 2006 looking at the employment growth potential in the care economy in 7 OECD countries, including Australia and Japan, found both economic and social benefits in investing in care. It will create millions of jobs. It will reduce the persistent gender employment gap. It will contribute to realizing gender equality in human development. And what could be more better than this? The economists from the Women's Budget Group who did a study using an advanced simulation looking at the employment impact of investing equivalent of 2% of GDP into social infrastructure of education, health, and social care services, particularly child care and elderly care, found that if you invest in care, it would actually generate over 21 million of jobs. It would also increase overall employment by around 2.4, if I'm not mistaken, to 6.1, depending on the country. It would also around 59 to 70% of those directly created jobs will be taken up by women. But beyond this, there are other employment multiplier effects, in particular raising the overall male employment from 1.4 to 4% in different countries. So in short, having the right kind of investment can actually turn the social crisis on care around. Not only it would increase women's employment, but at the same time, it will unlock the economic potential of women who cannot access employment simply because they have to perform unpaid care work for their families, children, and the sick. Well, the solutions don't even need to be so complicated. We urgently need family-friendly work policies to support women in their child-caring and career years. We need support and more support for working families in order for them to manage, plan their work and everyday life. We need high-quality, affordable childcare and early childhood opportunities, and to do our role every bit to support a woman and every family that they are supported to overcome their challenges and needs. Now, but how do these solutions look like in reality? So if you just quickly allow me to highlight some of the examples where unions working with allies and partners are creating a wholly different set of workplace and future they want for themselves, their families, and their communities. For instance, in the Philippines, unions are working with social partners on maternal and child health, provision of installation of breastfeeding facilities, or provision for breastfeeding breaks. In India, a colleague from SEWA would tell you that SEWA provide, through their child care workers cooperatives, they provide child care, full day child care to their members, or integrated child care to their members. In Indonesia, Cambodia, the Philippines, Bangladesh, South Korea, unions are running campaigns to enhance maternity protection and ratification of Convention 183. In Mongolia, unions working with others, they are gendering the labor law reform process, insisting to keep guarantees for women, extending protection of the labor law to domestic workers, providing for breastfeeding facilities. In Singapore, some 277 active collective bargaining agreements included provisions on equal remuneration. And in 2016, around 35% of these CBAs have included family-friendly policies such as flexible work arrangements, paid family or elder care leaves. And in New Zealand, who wouldn't know about the groundbreaking pay equity case fronted by a care worker, Kristen Bartlett, and her union, who paved the way for Care Support Pay Equity Settlement Act, which took effect last year in July, providing around 55,000 care and support workers with pay increases of between 15 to 50%, depending on their qualification experience, also provided funding for training. In Japan, unions targeted campaigns resulted into organizing women, non-regular workers who are predominantly women. In Israel, through collective bargaining agreements, administrative actions, and by legislations, they've managed to pass or amend existing laws, extending birth and parenting period after 15 weeks, which can now be shared with the spouse, or paternity leave of up to 7 days, including the day of birth, and nursing hours, which can now actually be shared, or which can be taken up by both genders. So all these examples are on top of a variety of awareness and capacity building programs aimed at promoting positive, gender equitable attitudes and behaviors, particularly amongst the male members and leaders, promoting diversity in leadership, or building gender-based free communities and workplaces. And lastly, what has women's leadership got to do with it? Simply put, more things get done than the rest of us can only talk about, as Dr. Stone rightly said yesterday. Indeed, imagine if you have more women who are actually holding seats, not just at the table, but in leadership, there is no limit on what they can contribute and achieve collectively. All the achievements and successes and stories I just shared just now were jump-started, led, driven by women and women themselves. We're happy to say that we're making some progress. It's slowly, but it's getting along. In terms of participation of women in trade union programs at all levels, we have seen that the participations continue to increase from just 19% in 2014 to 33% in 2017, while peaking at 63% in 2015. But of course, more importantly, is leadership. So how do women actually, what's the leadership rate for women? At the regional level, we're seeing women participation, representation, now at 37% at the titular position, which is the position where they have voting power. But more encouragingly, at the national level, women's representation and leadership jumped from just 18% in 2012 to now 25% in 2017. I know you would tell me, it's still small. Yes, it's still below the minimum constitutional provision of the ITUC, which is 30%, but it provides you an indication that progress is being made and more progress is possible. And finally, all this, we would continue to do all this and make many more great things with this potential, but we cannot do it alone. As Florence said yesterday, I join her in calling that let's work together, because care is a collective responsibility. Unions, employers, governments, social partners, and all of us here in the room and elsewhere, we need to be part of the solution. We're going to demand it, and we're sure that we're going to get it, because nothing else will ever work. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And even I would echo those. Woman has to do it herself. Well, the family structures are changing. The strong support structure that existed in joint family is slowly becoming thing of past. Yes, in the bargain, women got her much needed space and independence. But the pressures have increased. It's 3 times the stress. I don't know, we are talking about work family, and we are talking about her physical being, but tomorrow maybe, this is just on a lighter vein, we would be even talking about mental aspects of women, because the kind of stress she handles, she has to prove herself in the work arena, because she is entering into man-dominated world. Okay, so the caregivers are stepping in. The woman goes out to work. There is a vacuum out there. And this vacuum is generally filled by her elder children, who would, in most circumstances, would be a girl child, which compromises on her own growth potential, or would be limiting her growth. Or, if it's of a higher economic strata, then a caregiver steps in, who in general circumstances would be a person from a lower economic strata. And thereby, her care needs are compromised. So it's a big cycle. Then when we talk about these caregivers, again, in many instances, would be a migrant worker. So our policy discourses and all should focus, or should also take into consideration, the migration aspect, which are again crucial because they are the care providers in the region. Ms. Tang would be focusing on this particular aspect. Let me introduce her for your general information. Ms. Elizabeth Tang, she is General Secretary, International Domestic Workers Federation. She is from Hong Kong, and is currently the first elected General Secretary of the International Domestic Workers Federation by leaders of domestic workers' trade unions and other organizations worldwide. It is the only international trade union federation led by women, with 65 affiliates in 53 countries. And prior to this, Ms. Tang was closely connected with Domestic Workers Network in Asia, including the campaign towards the adoption of International Labour Convention 189 at the ILC Geneva in 2011. Throughout her working life, Ms. Tang has been involved in organizing at grassroots level, including domestic workers, local and migrants alike, and the workers in the food and beverages. She has worked with trade unions and other labor NGOs such as Hong Kong Christian Industrial Committee and the International Union of Food Workers Asia Pacific. Ms. Elizabeth Tang.
Good morning. I thank the ILO and the Australian government for organizing this very important conference. I'm speaking on behalf of my organization, the International Domestic Workers Federation, and our objective is to build strong and democratic organization of domestic workers so that they have voice, representation, and leadership. Domestic work is the sector that my organization representing is the significant pillar of the care economy globally, but specifically and more importantly in this region, the Asian Pacific. As we are aware of the statistics, over 23% of the global population of domestic workers are in this region, and many employed in these sectors are migrants. And we know domestic work makes all works possible. I come from Hong Kong, which is heavily, if not totally, dependent on migrant domestic workers. It will stop moving if the domestic workers, the migrant domestic workers go on strike. We are so dependent on them, but then we don't treat them well. As we know in this region, as you can read from the information there, only 10% are covered by labor law to the extent as other workers. So there's a lot to be done in this to give justice to these millions of domestic workers who have been supporting us, including women, so that they can achieve work-life balance. And I don't need to go into the conditions under which they have been employed. And I want to go, what can be done to fix these situations. And as Anna has already informed us, investment in care and domestic work can potentially generate employment in a spectrum of jobs. And we are talking about adding 3.3 to over 8% on jobs for female employment. And currently, domestic work already make up over 2.6 percentage points of all female employment. So this is very significant, and the potential is really huge. And because migrants comprise a considerable portion of these domestic work and home care services, so investment in this sector must be coupled not only on labor rights protection, but also the migrants' governance, and in at least 3 policy areas. The first is on recruitment, and on skills, and also on labor rights and social protections. So on recruitment, as we know, most of the migrant domestic workers are recruited through private agencies. So while they are formal and legal, but then the recruitment on the ground is often done by small recruiters and informal agents. And that's how problem starts at the source. And we need to improve law, ratify the Convention 189, and improve social security coverage so that these women will be treated as any other workers. And finally is the skill development and recognitions. Yesterday we heard from Nashika, working in Malaysia. She told us, as a domestic worker, actually she is also expected to do a big variety of jobs. A lot of domestic workers who take care of the elderly, also need to administer medicine and other care work. So skill upgrading training is necessary. But when they acquire this, they also need to be paid and remunerated accordingly, so that there will be justice done, and there's a great incentive to these women to get training. And finally, I want to say that actually there are already good initiatives, examples existing in this region, and that we can already build on, to rely on, to achieve what I have said at the policy level. In most of the East Asian countries, for example, there are already government or semi-government framework exists to provide care need to private households. For example, in Hong Kong, we have caregivers who are paid by taxpayer monies and provide care need at private households. But then there are also a large number of migrant domestic workers who do similar work, but they are not included in this framework. So they have a much lower working condition and are paid much lower. And the same kind of situation exists in South Korea and also in Japan, in other countries. And what we think the government needs to do is to expand this kind of frameworks, so that migrant domestic workers who are doing exactly the same kind of care work at the private households will be included in this framework, so that they will also enjoy the same kind of wages, remuneration, and other terms of employment as the other caregivers. And finally, I want to remind that in this region, as most of the domestic workers are migrant workers, and that's often the reason that they are being excluded from national legal coverage. And that is the time that we have to recognize, they are indispensable to our economies. So, we have to remove this barrier. And finally, I want to remind also us that just a few months ago, the ASEAN government meeting on migrant labor has adopted their statement, which include taking positive steps to ratify Convention 189. So this is the first time that the government has formally adopted a pledge, a commitment on this, and I think we should be reminded of this and work together as trade unions, as employers, as governments to make this happen. And this will benefit all the domestic workers working here, and this will create jobs for everybody and to improve our care economy for everybody, and this is a real win-win situation, and I think that is all we want to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Domestic workers are so important. They are the grassroots caregivers. And it's because of them women is entering into labor market. So shall we just forget them? They have their rights. They need to be protected. Yes, they're exposed to much more things. Nasrika yesterday was mentioning her story. They are usually invisible in most of the countries when we talk about in economic parlance. So the first thing is to make them visible. Well, yes, in India, we are working on to bring about registration of all domestic workers. That is to make them visible. Simultaneously, we are also working on bringing about social security for all, and that would cover even domestic workers. Yes, at times, she is sexually harassed. So for that, we in India have identified her as worker so that an employer-employee relation is developed. And once that relationship is developed, the act becomes applicable on her too. So she has her voice. So yes, we through our panel discussion or what our panelists have talked about, we have covered the entire gamut of care economy and caregivers and striking work-family balance and how is it important for economy of the country. Yesterday we heard the economy can boost 26% if women supervisors are there. There could be different reasons for that, but yes, one of them is because woman herself is a great manager. She's a multitasker. Not every time it's good for her. Like I mentioned earlier, she is a stress champion. So keeping the woman's entry into labor market is just not enough. And if one has to truly enjoy the gains, there has to be equal partnership of men too. For this, I'm thankful that we have one male representative on this panel. The man will have to change his patriarchal mindset. But we cannot wait for that to happen, right? So we have to find our own ways. So we need to have policy discourses in socio-cultural context. We need to have time use surveys, make visible the invisible paid work, unpaid work, and focus on care economy. And I'm sure the audience here would be having lots of questions because this subject is so close to our hearts. And I'm sure every woman present here would have seen this conflict of work-family balance. So can we have questions from the audience or Slido, if I could have the tab?
We will go first from the floor and then from Slido.
The lady behind there.
That's quite a long walk.
Thank you very much. My name is Susana. I am with Public Services International, which is a global union federation of workers in public services, including in the healthcare sector. And I would like to share some of the work we are doing in South Asia, where we have been working with one category of care workers, which are community-based health workers that provide this essential link between national health system and rural poor communities, such as pre- and postnatal care, such as family planning, such as vaccination, which are all very essential to, for instance, the Sustainable Development Goals and are fundamental in the discussion that we're having. And there are more than 1 million of these workers across South Asia. They go under different names. For instance, in India, they are called Accredited Social Health Activists, ASHAs. In Pakistan, they are called Lady Health Workers. In Nepal, they are called Female Community Health Volunteers. And despite the fundamental role that they are having, this narrative of opposing care and work has been putting them in a very difficult situation because this care work is being portrayed as a natural work of women, and therefore that has been the base to deny them the situation of workers, deny them to be recognized as workers. In all of these 3 countries, the government program conceptualized this workforce as a volunteer workforce, and therefore they don't receive any minimum wage or any of the benefits that are the rights of workers. So this has been the situation, but they have been working along with unions, and in Pakistan they have won, after a very long struggle, the right to be regularized. And that has been a great achievement, and we're working closely with other unions, including in India, where, for instance, in Mumbai, these workers called community health volunteers have been asking for their regularization. They have won that right in the industrial court. They have won that right at the level of the High Court. And now the Mumbai Municipal Corporation has appealed. The discussion is going on at the Supreme Court. And exactly this Monday will be the final hearing to decide on the regularization of these workers. So I hope that you will keep this in mind, keep on tracking what is going on, and we are hoping for the right decision from the Supreme Court of India.
Thank you. Maybe we take a few from the floor first before going back to the panel. Any other comments or questions from the floor?
Well, I think all the women present here are experts in work-family balance. Wow.
All right, we have one comment over there and then a Slido question.
My friend, actually.
So you answer him. Okay. You take the question.
Thank you very much. My name is Shinichi Akiyama from the Japanese Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare. And thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to participate in this very important conference. And I'd like to respond what Mr. Joncho Kim says as only male panelist. On behalf of the few male participants, I'd like to commend what the Korean government has done and what Korean government has achieved. First, I was very surprised and interested to find that we have so common issues between Korea and Japan. Both two countries have a very low birth rate and society is aging very rapidly. So we need to have more women participating in labor market. But still, there is a very low, internationally low female participation rate, and Japan has also gender pay gap still exists. We have to admit that. And by listening to Mr. Joncho Kim's explanation, I was very surprised and encouraged to find out that some new initiative which Korean government has achieved. For example, Korea has now labor inspectors, which is specialized in gender equality issue, and also Korean government will have a new domestic work law. And third, they have invented a smartphone application to check whether I'm safe for sexual harassment or not. And then finally, child care leave. More and more male are taking child care leave. So those initiatives on Japanese government, it's very innovative approach. So I think it's a very good opportunity, not only for Japan, but for all other governments and employers, workers, to learn from each other's lessons. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other question from the floor? Right, one over here, one over there.
Thank you so much. I'm Susan Bastani from Iran, Vice Presidency for Women and Family Affairs. We have taken some policies. Closer? Is it okay? We have taken some policies to balance work and family responsibilities for married employed women. For example, establishment of kindergarten near workplaces, reduction of work hours for mothers with disabled children, social insurance coverage, possibilities for early retirement for women, valuation of unpaid women's housework, providing comprehensive employee benefits package for women, adoption the law on the home-based work. But the problem is that the differences between public and private sector is a main issue, because it's easy to handle these policies in public sector, but in private sector that the number of women is increasing, it's the main problem. We would like to share those kind of experiences to see how we can handle it in private sector. Thank you.
So I would like to highlight the challenges of the disaster-affected areas. Mainly, many countries in Asia are suffering with the recurring disasters. If I talk about Afghanistan or Sri Lanka, they have suffered a war for a long time, and women are.
Keep very close to you.
Shall I repeat? So the women in informal sector, they have a dual role of when their husbands are killed, they have to run their family, they have economic as well as household responsibilities together with the trauma and all. So I feel that there should be a special need for these kind of women to look after their domestic responsibilities, and often it happens that they leave their families, their children behind, and they migrate. So there should be something specific for these women from the affected countries. And for countries in India and all, there is a huge need, and I agree with the panelists that skill building and social security are very important. Thank you.
We have question on Slido, so maybe the speaker want to also answer from the Slido first, because from the floor we seem to have comments and recommendation, but questions are on the slide.
Well, I was expecting questions for the panelists, and here I get it. Okay, in a country like India, where the majority are in the informal sector, how can we enforce legislation on maternity leave, flexible work, etc.? Yes, informal sector. It's a matter of concern for us. I am from the Government of India, and we are seriously deliberating on this. Like I just mentioned some time back, that first we are trying to make them visible, like when we talk about domestic workers. Registration of them, like each and every domestic worker will be registered. She will have an identity. And with that, all benefits flow. I also mentioned about her protection, about sexual harassment. But talking about other benefits, we are also deliberating on social security benefit for all. That will take care of many of their needs. So in that way, we are trying to extend the benefit to one and all. Yes, formal sector is very well protected. Yes, permanent employees are very well protected. We are trying to go much further ahead. We are in the process of bringing out, well, I'm saying it out here, we're also thinking of bringing out fixed term employment. So all those women who earlier were employed and due to their failure to strike work-family balance, they opt out and then become marginal workers or maybe informal sector, they would be able to avail all benefits which are available to permanent employees. So that is a big step. I hope that is clear. Thank you. Well, the second question that is coming on Slido is, how can we protect domestic workers at their place of work? Can we have Anna and Elizabeth to respond on to this?
Quickly, there are a lot of things that we can actually do in order that domestic workers can also protect themselves. Unions are doing a lot of programs in terms of making sure that they have the right information before they even leave to work abroad. We can also partner, unions are also partnering with organizations in the destination countries who can actually assist when they need help. But the problem always is that most of the domestic workers are not even allowed to use communication tools. But there are many cases that domestic workers can actually do it themselves without their employers knowing about it. I was thinking about the bilateral labor agreements or multilateral bilateral agreements. They can be effective instruments to protect domestic workers, but we need to make sure that those agreements would include protection, really genuine protection for domestic workers, like allowing them to use and access to communication tools, internet, phones, allowing them to actually get out of the house, have their own leave so that they can actually talk to other domestic workers. They can go to the embassies, get training, and get more information on how to protect themselves. So there are a lot of things that we can do and the domestic workers are doing in order to protect themselves.
Yeah, to protect themselves, and that is the whole purpose of my organization. We believe the key is really domestic workers have their own voice, have their power, ability to represent themselves, and to take leadership to change the situation. And this is happening. We have 65 domestic workers, most of them are trade unions in my organization all over the world, and 14 of them are in Asian Pacific. And some of them are organizing themselves in very, very restrictive situations. For example, Malaysia, where migrants are not supposed to organize, but domestic workers, migrant domestic workers have succeeded to do it. And because of that, they encourage the domestic workers who face abuses, who don't get paid, to report. And in some cases, they get redress. And this has effect to encourage more and more domestic workers to come forward. And there are many, many interesting examples which have been created by domestic workers. For example, in Indonesia, which is also a huge country, maybe not as India, but it's very huge, and where our members have organized themselves into small units. So in some high-paid area, middle-class area in Jakarta, they organize themselves by a condominium. So each apartment has created one unit, and where the domestic workers will try to meet the owners' associations to talk about wages, to get a free space for them to meet. So these are creative methods. We don't normally hear from other unions, but domestic workers have developed this method to be able to voice their problem, but also to get protection, to get rights, which don't even exist legally in the labor law. I'm talking about Indonesia, where there is no minimum wage coverage for domestic workers, but because they have managed to form these small units at the community, so they are able to negotiate with their employers through the owners association to get higher pay. So I'm just giving some examples. And the last one I want to talk about is happening in Hong Kong, where there are better laws, but then still agencies charge excessive fees. So our Federation of Asian Domestic Workers Union interview domestic workers who have this experience, publish a very strong report, and finally the Hong Kong government was compelled to impose a code of conduct. But now our domestic workers are still monitoring, how the agencies are practicing this code of conduct. So, through domestic workers themselves, through the organizations, they are making sure there will be law enforcement, law adoption. So for us, this is the most important way to protect domestic workers' rights.
There was a question on digitalization and the care economy. I won't speak about the care economy in relation to this, but a general point on digitalization. We have to remember here that technology has been a huge enabler for women, right? But it comes with challenges because you also have situations, okay, technology makes homework, part-time work, working remotely all possible. But on the other hand, you have to also look at the laws because when the home becomes the workplace, it puts questions like workmen's compensation, who is responsible for safety. All those things come up, and our laws have not always kept a pace with those in our parts of the world. The other issue is technology is a double-edged sword sometimes. It has become the whole idea of work anywhere, anytime, right? A lot of us at executive or higher level know that you are always answerable to office. And how is this going to affect the other roles we have in life, work-life balance? Now, I know in France, trade unions took up this case and they won the right not to answer their emails after a particular time. Where are we? We need to think of it because I have colleagues with young children who answer emails at 12 in the night, midnight. So we need to address that. One other point, which actually my question to you is, okay, we have all come here as women. We have faced a lot of challenges at immense personal sacrifice. So my question to you is, will we ever have it all? Are we expecting too much? What should be in place for us to have it all? And do we also have to have certain flexibilities? Do we set ourselves too high targets? Do we take on things that we don't have to? That's my question to you. Thank you.
Would you like to respond to this question, digitalization?
I want to respond to the question raised at the front table. Thirdly, a third question, that's the issue of kind of blind spot in private sector, usually in the field of small and medium company in private sector. We have wonderful legally obligatory institutions such as maternity leave, parental leave, but those wonderful concepts don't apply to the small and medium-sized companies. So to cope with that kind of problem, Korean government is now doing this kind of thing. We have specially designed program such as tax incentive or a subsidy for a small and medium company, and also we have specially designed work and life balance consulting only for small and medium companies. Okay, that's my answer.
Now, may I request the panelists to give one key message for the benefit of participants here to take away from this? No time for questions, just one key message. We'll start with you.
Key message, well, I'm going to throw off my employer representative hat and take on my trainer activist hat. One key challenge I issue young women in an audience is that in your lifetime, change at least one man for the better, because this is not a journey we are going to make alone if we are looking at flexibility, work-life balance. So if you already have a very changed man, take a difficult man. Your challenge, change one life in your lifetime, change one man for the better in the cause. More if possible. Thank you.
I would like to respond to your question. I can't have it all. No matter how much I try, this is a note to myself. No matter how much I try, I could never possibly humanly do everything, make everything my responsibility forever. And I think that's very important to accept it, because from there, it gives us empowerment to actually say when it gets really hard and asked for help. I know my context will be different from all other people because even if they say, I cannot do this alone anymore, if there are no support systems in place, still women would end up taking those difficult compromises and sacrifices. So I fully agree with you. We need to engage men in this conversation. But my question is, do even men are on the same page when we talk about gender equality or what it means to value care? And I think the conversations need to start from there. I just want to give a quick example. We are doing annual youth leadership program. You know, these young men, whenever they attend the session on gender equality, they always give you this feeling that I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk about gender equality. So we had to think of ways on how do we engage young men. So what we did, we designed programs. We designed how to deliver. It's not a lecture. It has to be a collaborative process where you encourage men and women to work together. So after actually the program, we have young men who are totally different individuals who are now willing to talk to women about gender equality and actually translating everything into, well, actions. Thank you.
My last remark. Actually, I work for my division for almost 3 years. I have only daughter. She turned into 20. This year she will get into university. When I work very hard, very passionately. Especially, I always thinking about my daughter's future. Not others' problem, my daughter's problem. Sexual harassment in the workplace, after marriage, she will get husband, no housekeeping, no child caring responsibility. That's the problem. I want to change that kind of attitude, mood, atmosphere, environment of Korean society. My last word is, men, we should change.
I only think of domestic workers all the times, day and night. And I invite you to think of one thing you can do to support me, to support domestic workers, to have change. Because I believe, in one way or other, we are connected with them. Either we work as domestic workers or we support domestic workers to get rights, or we are employer of domestic workers. I'm sure there's some in this room. Or I know I have a relative who employ domestic workers, or I have friends who employ domestic workers. So there are ways and means, I'm sure, in a very practical way that you can make a change. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for enlightening all the participants here on various aspects and for your key messages. Yes, men need to change. When we generally talk, like amongst women, and if she happens to be a mother of 2 kids, she'll say, oh, I'm a mother of 3 kids. Because she is referring to her husband too as a kid to be taken care of. With that, I'm signing off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, our chair and the panelists. If you may step forward here and take a nice group photos. Well, while our chair and panelists are doing their photos, can we have our Slido poll up on the screen, please? And this is an opportunity for all of us to vote on multiple choice. Okay, thank you. One more round of applause for our chairs and our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, if we can now do a quick polling on the number here. According to the ILO Gallup poll, what percentage of women in East Asia and Southeast Asia and the Pacific said they would prefer to work in paid job? If you can go to your Slido. The code is for Women AP. And let's see Right? Moving up and down. 80%, 60%, 20%, and look like 80% have the majority. All right, a few more seconds. Okay. Oh, just when I thought we have finished. Yeah, and I can tell you that 80% is a correct choice. So, right, now let me go back up on stage. Thank you very much. That's the polling, just to add another knowledge. So 80% is the correct answer. We are now moving for the coffee break, but before that, allow me to only share a word on the panels, because in Cambodia, I myself is a working woman, and I don't do a lot of housework. I do a little housework, but not much. And my family will have to accept that because, well, I earn the most money at home. But my grandmother, I mean, even if she knows the fact that this is things that she cannot change, I will not be able to do more housework. It's just that when she introduced me to her friends, when she met, if I met her friend for the first time, I said, this is my granddaughter, this is Nana, one of the biggest celebrity in Cambodia, and the number 0 of her housework is as big as a stadium. So she doesn't do any housework. She have to mention that all the time she introduced me to a new friends. Right. So we have one quick housekeeping announcement for those of you who need to fly this evening or tonight. That would mean you are checking out from the hotel. May I remind you that check-out time is before 12 noon. So you might as well want to check out now during the coffee break or a little bit before lunchtime so that they don't charge us extra. Please, during the coffee break, go to our knowledge corner right on the left-hand side of our room. Those are the publication, reports, and videos, or also our photos on screen. So please visit our knowledge corner and explore more on the table. Also, the touch screen that we have on the left-hand side of our table is the gaps, the gender gaps in our region and in your country for your own knowledge. Please also take pledge and post on your social media with hashtag #4WomenAP and hashtag GameChangers so that we can extend our discussion and message across the world and our platform. Thank you very much. Please enjoy 30 minutes of coffee break and see you soon.